Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the United Church of Gainesville. Such a beautiful morning here in North Central Florida. Good to see everyone. Of course, we always like to welcome everyone, visitors, friends, new and long-standing members. Miss Carla Lewis from the Duval neighborhood is with us this morning. Today's service is presented by the Board of Parish Ministry, of which I'm a new member. The UCG theme for this month is A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Our service title this morning is Neighborhood Economics, with the focus again being the Duval neighborhood. Of course, as usual, there are many activities and events going on at UCG, so we encourage you to check out the newsletter website. Our next Food First Sunday is November 7th. Please bring any non-perishable goods. Thank you.
May I be a guard for those who need protection. A boat, a raft, a bridge for those who wish to cross the flood. A resting place for the weary. A vase of plenty, a tree of miracles, and for the boundless multitudes of living beings, may I bring sustenance.
Please rise as you're able to join in our first hymn. It's on the second page of your bulletin. Mark will play it through once, and then we'll join together in singing.
The World Has Need of You by Ellen Bass. The poem begins with these words. Everything here seems to need us. Rainer Maria Rilke. I can hardly imagine it as I walk to the lighthouse, feeling the ancient prayer of my arms swinging in counterpoint to my feet. Here I am, suspended between the sidewalk and twilight, the sky dimming so fast it seems alive. What if you felt the invisible tug between you and everything? A boy on a bicycle rides by, his white shirt open, flaring behind him like wings. It's a hard time to be human. We know too much and too little. Does the breeze need us? The cliffs? The gulls? If you've managed to do one good thing, the ocean doesn't care. But when Newton's apple fell toward the earth, ever so slightly fell toward the apple.
This is our time for prayers of the people. So let us turn to our hearts during this special time together. We offer our ongoing prayers for Joyce Griffith, who continues to experience cardiac difficulties. For Glenn Acombe, who has resumed chemotherapy to keep previously treated cancer at bay. We are told he is in good spirits and is hopeful for a good outcome. Of course, there are many other persons in need. Any of those we silently would like to recognize as we take a moment of silence. Thank you. Here's a prayer of peace that I found from the International Ministries located in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. Now, there is a refrain. If you would like to say that aloud or silently, the refrain would be, "Bring them peace." For those in our neighborhoods and our world who are hungry, perhaps without enough food for today, or unsure about what their family will eat tomorrow, bring them peace. For those who fear leaving their homes due to the risk of a virus or the risk of threats and violence, bring them peace. For those who are sick with COVID-19, with other illnesses, with depression and anxiety, or with any other ailments, bring them peace. For those who are suffering job loss, economic insecurity, especially those who can find no assistance and have no safety nets, bring them peace. For those who have been unexpectedly separated from loved ones, whether by travel restrictions, quarantine, or even hospital rules, bring them peace. For all those who experience loss, anguish, and the weight of the unknown, bring them peace. Bring them the peace that instills calm into fear, the peace that instills love into sadness, peace that instills promise into despair. We all long for peace in our hearts, in our minds, in our neighborhoods during this unusually difficult time. Amen.
The scripture reading this morning is from Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 37. Just then a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he said, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said to him, "What is written in the law? What do you read there?" He answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And Jesus said to him, "You have given the right answer. Do this, and you will live." But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, "Take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spend." Which of these 3, do you think, was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The lawyer said, "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise."
So our theme for these few weeks is about neighbors and neighborhoods. And today we're talking about the economics of being a neighbor. Just as the story showed us, there are ways we should and to be the kind of people we want to be, sharing of our money, and as a UCG group and as individuals. And today's speakers are Carla Lewis and Jerry Steinberg. And Carla is a long-term resident of East Gainesville, and she has served as the CEO for the Greater Duval neighborhood for almost 10 years now. During that time, she started a lot of programs that address the issues facing that community, her community. Some of those programs were Diamonds in the Rough, Women's Empowerment, and Out East Youth Empowerment. Carla currently serves on several boards within the city and county as the community representative. And she works closely with law enforcement to promote safety and health in the communities. Some of her work also includes neighbor revitalization, community development, policy, advocacy, and grant writing. So we're happy to have Carla here with us. She's a good friend of Marianne Schmink, and Marianne is so sorry she's out of town and can't be here today, but yeah. So we, if you remember last week, we as a congregation voted to give 1/10 of the money that's been forgiven for the PPP. Is that correct? PPP? I think so. We gave 1/10. We wanted to choose somebody in our community to give it to, and we gave it to the Duval Neighborhood Association. So Carla's here to tell us about that. And then we'll have Jerry Steinberg talk generally about what giving, about our personal giving, Jerry. So, welcome to the speakers. Carla.
Oh, y'all are too kind. Thank you so much. I'm going to briefly cover a couple of things. One thing I want to talk about as we talk about economics is the gift. So the gift, and my bio is so generally written. I work in partnership with several groups, and we started Neighborhood Revitalization back in 2013. And at that time, Dr. Schmink, who I affectionately call my Auntie Mary Ann, because that's who she is, was already at that table when we got there as neighbors. And what's so important was that, yes, the economics are really important. Your funds actually fund our programs and services. We have senior programs called Seniors on the Move, where we want to keep our elderly community healthy and happy. We're one of the oldest Black communities in the city of Gainesville, in the Duval community. And so we have a lot of original residents there that are now aging. And we want them to be able to age in place. We want them to be healthy and have a community that's walkable. And we want our young people in our community to work with our elders so that we can work in community across generations to be healthy and whole. That's one aspect of what we do. Andrew Miles actually runs our Out East Youth Tutoring and Support. And yeah, I helped to create that, but he does all the work, all the programs. We have summer programs for our kids. They're enrichment. Most of our kids are at-risk youth or in foster care. And it's important because we're filling in a gap that is not covered in some of our current systems for our kids. And so we stand in the gap with our resources thanks to people like you and your generosity. We also have women's empowerment and an advocacy team that works to help change the policy. So those are some of the programs, and anytime that you all want to see or participate, we have websites where you can donate, and you can also see the end results, because it's important to me to know what my money accomplishes, to make sure that I'm not just investing in something. When you invest in the Duval neighborhood, you're investing in a community, and you're helping push work that has been done for the past 10 years. And then I want to move into what that work looked like, because the economics of the neighborhood is important. But I go back to Mary Ann Schmink and one of the important aspects that she brought to our community. She went past what her money and her dollar can do. One of the most important things, and why I like to be in front of congregations, is because congregations are full of talent. They're full of talent, they're full of resources that go beyond money. And what was important about Mary Ann is she didn't have an idea like some of the agencies that were represented at the time. They had an idea to come in and fix our community, and that's not what we wanted or needed. And so, as the lady spoke before, it's about giving people what they need. And in order to do that, you have to come in and be a good listener, and then sign on to be a partner. And one of the important things, and the example that Mary Ann Schmink set for us, was that she didn't come in to tell us what to do. She told us what talent she had, and she matched them with the dreams that we had, and she made sure that she pushed our agenda. And that's what's important as well. As we talk about money and economics, sometimes it's about using your face and your time and other resources that you're connected to help us achieve that goal. And it's also for my community, recognizing, and one of the reasons why I like to talk about people like my Auntie Mary Ann and my Auntie Nancy and other women that I have taken under my wings as my family, because that's the way they act, right? One of the important aspects I tell in my community is we got to stop this barrier and this history of distrust that we've had from people that don't look like us. And I know it's been rough, and you know, we've had a past couple of years where I don't have to tell you it got really rough at some times, but I think this is a great time for us to recreate that and take this opportunity to build relationships with each other. And so it's not just about your money, even though we need it and we appreciate it. We're a small nonprofit and we're operating coordinating the best we can, mostly under volunteers. But we need your talent. If you're teachers, we have people that need students. If you know foreign languages, we need that taken. If you have any ideas on STEM and math, we want you active. We want you to interact with our elderly people and help them become active. So it's not just about economics when it comes to being a good neighbor. Being a good neighbor is about building relationships and partnerships so that we can work towards a common goal and a common good for all people. And that's what we're here for, and that's what your resources help us to do in our neighborhood. So thank you on behalf of Greater Duval Neighborhood Association for just your resources and your future, and even right now, the thoughts and the consideration that God is laying on your heart to step in and help fill in the gap for our community. Thank you.
I forgot my red sweater. Good morning. Ms. Carla, thank you. A note of appreciation to Reverend Rebecca Anderson, who inspired a portion of what you're going to hear. I hope to give you a look at a very well-known Bible story and try to look for the miracle behind the magic. And then talk just a little bit about Mr. Rogers' neighborhood and finding that same miracle. And most importantly, looking at our neighborhood and seeing that same miracle. I don't think it was magic. I'm pretty sure it wasn't magic. The miracle part is the harder part for me, but I know it wasn't magic. There are 4 or 5 places in the Bible where the story of Jesus feeding a group of folks, a large group of folks, is told. And there's differences in the version. In some places there's 4,000 guys. In other places there's 5,000 men. Same story, but different versions. One place it says there's a crowd of men and women and children. It's nice that they included us, some of these folks. They're out in a remote area, that's pretty clear. And Jesus has been preaching and teaching for a few days, and people are starting to get hungry. And Jesus recognizes that, and he feels compassion for them. And so he wants to help feed people, but they're in a remote area. There's very little food to go around. And so he puts out the word, has anybody got any food? Well, apparently, in one version, there's 5 loaves and 2 fishes. In another version of the story, there's 7 loaves and a few fishes, and then there's a little boy, and he's got some fishes and some loaves. So Jesus takes the fishes and the loaves, he blesses them, and lo and behold, thousands of people are fed. And I think in John it says, people leave there having seen this magic, and they know that Jesus is the Messiah. When I was a younger person, I looked at that story, heard it in Sunday school, and I went, wait a minute. Now, how did this work? So Jesus takes the bread and he blesses it, and he breaks off a piece, and another piece grows. And then he breaks off another piece, he gives it to someone, and another piece of the bread grows. And then he puts some loaves out in the crowd. Everybody takes a piece, and before they can hand it to the next person, the loaf grows back. And if that isn't confusing enough for a young person, what about the fishes? I mean, you take the bite of the fish, and the fish becomes whole again. Yeah. So apparently, I, as a younger person, wasn't the only person that worried about this or thought about this, because as I grew older, I learned that progressive theologians, progressive Bible scholars took a look at this story and they said, wait a minute. There's another way to look at this. You know, Jesus was a pretty good student of human nature. He knew that people wouldn't come way out there in this remote area without bringing at least a granola bar. And so they also knew that Jesus was a good preacher and a great influencer. He could connect with those people. So what I think is, well, maybe brings that little boy up. He says, look here, this youngster's been out here fishing all day. He's brought some lunch, and this young man is willing to share with us his food. Doesn't anybody here have anything else they can maybe share? And one by one, a granola bar comes out, maybe some rice and beans, hummus, I don't know. And all of a sudden, people feel comfortable enough and safe enough that what they've squirreled away can be shared. And there's enough food for baskets to be left over. Well, some people think that's a bummer. I mean, that's not nearly as snazzy as the front page headline that reads, "Future Messiah feeds thousands with 2 fish," versus a little paragraph on the back page of the paper that says, "A really good preacher gets people to share what they brought." Not nearly as interesting. But to me, I feel that the real miracle is not in the magic of loaves of bread that expand on their own. The real magic is, in fact, the sharing. That got me to thinking about Mr. Rogers. Well, actually, that's not true. What really got me thinking about Mr. Rogers is that that's the church theme for the next few weeks. But it seemed to fit because on that little TV screen, and they were little then, this man comes in, puts on a sweater, changes his shoes, he sits down, and he looks at us, and he invites us into his world, into his neighborhood. And he makes us feel comfortable. He shows us what kindness is. He makes me feel confident that I can be who I am. And he teaches me about sharing. I bet there's no way to count the number of times Mr. Rogers used the word share and sharing. But here's a quote that he got the point across without even using the word. It's not so much what we have in life that matters. It's what we do with what we have. Now, you can take that a lot of different ways. And the way that I'm focusing this morning is that tells me that I can give of what I have. And that's what really matters. I can share. And who knows how many young people, mostly young people, but maybe not all young people, looked at what Mr. Rogers taught us and went on to live better, more sharing lives, and how therein there is a miracle to be found. It's not magic, and it's not front page worthy, maybe, but it's a miracle nonetheless. And that gets me to the miracles in our own neighborhood, our own church, our community. We are sharers. You know, Carla, Marianne Schmink also is a spark plug in the Community Weatherization Coalition. This church helped start that organization where we go into the community and help people save money on their electric bills and their water bills. And a good part of the membership and the people, the volunteers in that group, led in many cases by Marianne Schmink, a good part of those volunteers are from this church. And look at the way we share our resources with other neighborhoods. We share among ourselves. We gather to put nutritious food into backpacks so that kids can have something to eat over the weekend. There are people that need shelter and food, and we open our doors for people who need lodging to stay for a week in the Family Promise Program. We are, in fact, a community of sharers. And that might not make front page, but I'll take the paragraph in the back of the paper for what this community is. And here's another thing. Some of you know I've been on the stewardship committee for a few years. Well, last year, here at our church, we mounted a pledge campaign, excuse me, in the middle of a pandemic, in a time when people were disconnected, we couldn't see each other in person, and lots of people were having a pretty hard time. And we went out and asked for them to make financial commitments to the works of this church. And do you know what happened? I think it was a miracle. We came this close to meeting a very ambitious church budget. And I think there's a miracle there. I'm still sure that it wasn't magic, but I think there's a lot of miracles that happen, even when miracles aren't front page events. Our neighborhood, our church, our neighboring neighborhoods are full of sharing miracles. They're exactly like that miracle that took place more than 2,000 years ago.
Please rise as you're able for our final hymn. Again, Mark will play it through once, and then we'll join in singing together. It's on the back of your bulletin.
quick word before the benediction. Jerry mentioned last year's pledge campaign, and we are in the first week of this year's. And Jerry's got pledge cards. You notice he left me to say all this stuff. And he and Catherine are going to be out beyond the courtyard to help anyone who wants to pledge or respond. One of the things that the enlistment campaign and the team wants to emphasize this year is we know there's a pandemic and we know there's people who have gone through a tough time. They simply want you to respond. If you can't give this year, they understand. They'd like to know that, maybe help, but they hope to hear from everyone about this sharing that connects us as our own UCG neighborhood and allows us to connect with neighborhoods beyond. And if you respond today, chocolate. Chocolate. The word benediction means good words, and so a few. To the ends of the earth, go and build bridges. Go and connect. Demolish dividing walls, or at least peer over them. Search for openings. Find points of intersection along the many footpaths. See not a single way. Know your own path and cherish its rightness for you. Pause at the crossroads and gaze down another's route to cherish its rightness for them. Each path holds its own beauty, for God has passed there. Ruach, spirit, wind, breath, is a traveling companion along each trodden pathway, across each bridge. And so now we take our worship to work. Amen.